So whenever we talk about behavior, it includes a process where information is being transferred. Okay, so someone is reacting to a particular information or stimulus. So the stimulus comes from a person and the other person reacts to it. Or one individual sends a signal, the other individual receives it and responds to it and shows a particular change in the state. So it could be like walking, it could be running, it could be being scared, it could be whatever. Even whatever I am doing right now, I'm trying to send you signals which you are receiving in a digital format. So we are basically communicating. So communication is an important part of all the behaviors that we see, that we do, and that we perceive throughout our life, as well as all the individuals around us. So it's a way of sending and receiving signal. It's always two-way. Communication is a exchange of signals that should be always two-way. There should be a signaler, there should be a receiver, right? And that can be interspecific, and one person or one individual dealing with the entire population. That could be anything. Okay, so there is part of signaler which sends the signals. So the signals is received by the receiver with respect to the senses, that is any kind of senses or the signal reception that we have. So we usually call it senses. So we receive signals in the form of visual sense or auditory noises or movements or sometimes tactile or touching or feeling the pressure or temperature change and whatever. So all these signals are received by senses with the receiver, and once a receiver receives a particular signal, it sends a feedback. Okay, so there is a feedback, there is a behavior that shows that I have either received the signal or I want to repel to it or I want to react to it. So there is a feedback which might again give signals to the signaler or just to the receiver. So whatever that could be. Okay, so that's why this kind of cyclic process. So that might be within a feedback within the receiver, or there might be again one going back to the signaler. So the signals that is exchanged over multiple individuals, which can be either to the signal or to the receiver, it can be either honest or dishonest. Now, honest signals are usually, as because working within two individuals, they are mutually beneficial or mutually impact each other's interests. Whereas in dishonest signal, it's like one organism is trying to mislead the other with a falsified or a substituted information. So there is like one particular information that is shown and there is another information. So in case of fiddler crabs, they have a large arm in front, okay, which is usually heavier and used to dominate you in the fights. But many times during the fight it breaks off. A new arm grows out, but it is usually lighter. So the thing is, now the arm which seems larger appears to be a particular signal. That is, I have a bigger arm, so I'm dominant. But the thing is, if someone fights with that, it will break off. So these kind of signals are called dissonant signals. So it is meant to show that the arm is heavy, but it is not. It is entirely hollow. Yeah. So these kind of signals are called dishonest signals. Now there can be many different type of signals based on the function or based on the system which is working with. So it could be tactile, that deals with touch, or haptic feedback. You can measure pressure or sensation over your particular skin, particular surfaces, and that sort of signal, that sort of exchange is called tactile communication. Then there is chemical communication. This simply deals with different kind of chemicals, that might be pheromones, that may be hormones, that may be chemical signals, volatile, non-volatile signals. That might be different sort of chemical signatures which are transferred from one individual to other. So this type of communication is kind of older way of communication. Then comes visual, which includes different kind of variation in visual stimulus. That may be coloration, that may be morphological characters, that may be anything. Then there are auditory signals, that receives and sends with respect to the vibrations around the body of the organisms. Then there are physical signals that involves physical energy modifications like electrocommunication, variation in temperature, temperature based modifications. So all these kind of interactions and communication signals can be prevailed in different kind of organisms and have multiple functions. So we will study that in detail. But before that, it is important to understand that from a receiver's end, the senses play a major role. And there are many different kind of senses. Now, we particularly perceive senses with 5 different modifications or modalities, that is smell or taste, touch, vision, uh, hearing. So all these kind of signals enter to our senses. Then the senses perceive it and understands it. So these are the two processes. There is entry of signal. Okay, there is signals entry through the senses. Now the senses perceive something. Okay, then it is interpreted by the brain. For example, see, if I look at a color, it is blue. In the sense, I know that the hue, that the reflection, that the wavelength that I'm getting is of something that is called blue. If throughout our childhood we might have perceived it as red, so the if the nanometers that is around, are on the extreme end of violet, if that would have been said red, then we would have perceived it red. Okay, we would not have said it violet. So the thing that we understand is based on how we learn it. The color green appears green because we have made it understand that this sort of variation in color is called green. The reflectance that you get, that perceive, that senses, is something that is registered at green. Right? So these kind of informations are collected and informed and stored with respect to the learning abilities, as well as it changes with individual to individual. So whatever you sense might be different with respect to different individuals. So the pain, that change in temperature, so all these informations that you sense might be different from you with respect to the other individual. So the same temperature variation will be there. Like there is a 5-degree drop. Okay, one person might not feel that much of difference, one person might feel so much of difference. So it depends in which state he or she has been developed, okay, and what information he or she registers in the brain. So there are two different aspects, that is senses and sensory modality. So sensory modality deals with the interpretation of the brain or perception. So modalities we perceive are as light, sound, temperature, taste, pressure, and smell. So these are modalities. Okay. So the things that we perceive through our senses are either chemical signals, visual signals, variation in light signals, then there is vibrations, then there is variation in temperature. So we perceive it in the way that there is light. Okay. So that is perceived with respect of signals and then are interpreted by our brains. So understand, those could be the both. So both senses and sensory modality are interrelated. Okay, senses means receiving something, that is light. If you receive a light, then you are doing it through its senses. Then it is interpreted by your brain. So the senses cannot alone do everything. They need to interpret and process the information and then provide a particular point of reference. So when multiple signals are associated with each other, like right now I am telling you something and something is visible on your screen. So you are seeing something, you are listening on the same time. Okay, so that sort of interaction is called multimodal. So you're not just receiving something, you're receiving multiple signals once at a time and you're interpreting with respect to that. So when I speak in front of you, I'm moving my lips. Okay, I'm saying something. So you are what, visually observing what my movement of lips are, then what I'm trying to tell, or how my hand gestures are, how my hands are moving, how my head is moving. So all of this information, the visual, the auditory, and as far as concerned other signals as well. Sometimes people touch each other while speaking to them. So there are like 2 3 particular signals forming one particular meaning, and that is called multimodal sensory systems.